Hello there, welcome to Charles Circle and welcome to Captain of Industry. Today, we're kicking off our Update 4 playthrough. Update 4 just dropped this week at time of recording. We spent a few hours on stream checking out all the new features on launch day. I'll link to the VOD of that stream below in case that's of interest to you, but now we're ready to kick off our proper long-form series. If you've seen some of our previous work, this will be in the vein of our Headliner Update 3 playthrough. We're aiming for what we call beginner accessible, meaning that the series won't assume you've been playing for 1,000 hours already, but if you have, you'll still enjoy it too. After this one wraps up, we'll probably kick off a silly challenge series aimed at a more intermediate to advanced player in the vein of our Corn Rocket playthrough. If you haven't seen those series, I'll link to both of them below. Enough preamble though, let's get into it. We're going to play on the new Update 4 map Shattered Isles. The headliners for Update 4 include bridges and amphibious vehicles, and Shattered Isles as an archipelago is designed as a playground to explore both of those systems, so it seems appropriate. We'll stick with the default starting location as well. Because this is a beginner accessible playthrough, we're going to play on Captain difficulty, but we are going to toggle the full set of realism options. You can pause here and read through everything that entails if you'd like, but it really just boils down to we want our mistakes to have consequences. Let's name our island Pittsburgh. Update 4 is about bridges, and Pittsburgh is apparently the city with the most bridges per capita in the world. And here's the game seat if you'd like to follow along. One last quick note, I do have both DLCs active, the supporter version and the new Trains DLC. We'll try to explore all that content as well, but I'll be sure to call it out when we do so you're not confused if you only have the base game. Let's set sail. Here we are. So, if you're not familiar, Captain of Industry starts out with us shipwrecking here and having to rebuild. We start out scavenging scrap materials from the island and develop our industry over the course of the game all the way up through a space station and an asteroid mining program. This island here will turn into a bustling metropolis over the coming episodes, so it's worth orienting ourselves quickly before we unpause and begin work. Pressing L to toggle the resource layer view, we can see several resource deposits across our island. Here in red is iron. Out this way, in this blue-green color, is copper. This is coal. This is limestone, sand, water, and oil. There are some others that we'll cover when we get there, but those are going to be our most important early game materials to keep in mind. All of these materials we need extracted and transported to wherever we consume them. Transport isn't super efficient early game, so we'll want to build our first factories with those transport costs in mind, i.e. near where we're producing those things. So that essentially means that we'll expect this plateau, in this area in particular, to be our industrial core. We'll also need to do some farming, which requires water, so we'll probably do that in this area to leverage this groundwater deposit. And our first decently sized oil deposit here means we'll probably make this coastal section our refinery area. Conveniently, that leaves us in this space lots of room near our settlement itself to expand, which is good, because we are going to significantly expand the footprint of what is currently a pile of containers. Now that we're oriented, let's get started. We're going to follow these tutorial goals more or less, both because they're great for bringing beginners along and making sense of the game, but also because they give some very nice bonuses for completion that will speed our development along. It's hard to say no to free stuff. So, before we unpause, I'm going to do a few things right away so that our starting 10 trucks have some things to do. First, we're going to need to gather wood. We do that by cutting down trees using the tree harvester. He'll need a pair of supporting pickups to transport the wood that he chops down, as well as using H to toggle the tree harvesting designation, the instruction to cut down certain trees and some and not others. So we'll have him start up in this area. As I said, I think we are going to build our farming eco up in this area eventually. We're probably going to need to clear all of these trees, although now, as of Update 4, you can actually just build over them. It's nice if we can clear them first because we'll actually get resources from them. So that will be our first area of focus for harvesting trees. Next, we'll need to get research going, and research is going to require a pair of labs. So we're going to place 2 of them right away. These will not be permanently located here, but this seems like as good a spot as any for now. The other thing that research labs require, though, is power. And so we will build a small starter diesel generator, which will be supplied manually with some diesel, which we currently have some of in our shipyard, in order to generate the relatively small amount of power that we need. This generator, and we can build multiple of them, can make 800 kilowatts. These only take 40, but it's more than 0, so we need to have 1 generator to start. Finally, we're going to place our very first industrial buildings, which is what this iron production tutorial goal is all about. So, in order to do that, we will need a blast furnace. This blast furnace, if we place it here real quick, uses the only recipe we have available to us right now, which is iron scrap and coal to make molten iron, and there's some exhaust that comes out of it. Iron scrap we're currently going to collect from this starter deposit. Eventually, we'll have to replace it with the iron ore that we'll mine, but we're not there yet. So, because this is our starter source, and because we'll find iron scrap out on the world map eventually, we'll get there in a moment, it makes sense to have this starter one near our starting deposit and shipyard. Now, it spits out molten iron. We can't use molten iron as is, but we can use it in a metal caster to create iron plates, which is one of the first most important economic units for our base. So we'll place 2 of these because we make 24 molten iron, and each of these can handle 12. Of course, they'll need connected because the molten iron has to have somewhere to go. So we'll run it down and along this way. We'll also need a smokestack to handle the exhaust produced by this blast furnace. We will send that up into the sky and deal with the pollution later. This will spit out iron plates, and our trucks can come get them from these machines. The last thing we need, though, is coal. Coal in order to power the blast furnace itself. Eventually, we're going to mine coal off in the distance and bring it to our industries themselves. But we don't have the ability to do that quite yet. What we do have is the ability to turn the wood that we just designated our tree harvester to go gather, and take that wood and turn it into coal itself. This will also require an exhaust output here, but more or less we're just going to get coal. We'll do this right next to it because, well, that's where the coal is going. So that should cover all of these tutorial goals. Let's unpause and pick some technologies to research once our labs get going. So, with that on speed 1 in the background, let's talk tech tree. It's a pretty big one. There's a lot for us to eventually research. Let's start small. The first thing I think we should probably grab is construction. This will allow us to make more advanced materials out of these basic materials that we are either scavenging or collecting or producing. We'll grab that first. The next thing I think we should probably focus on is vehicles and mining. So vehicles are the core of your economy. Without trucks to gather, transport materials, we are unable to make things move. So we will need to be able to scale this up. And importantly, we're going to need to be able to make excavators in order to mine materials. We can't stop producing coal from trees until we can start mining coal from the coal mine off in the distance. So we'll grab that next, probably. From there, we have a few different directions we can go, but I think what we're actually going to do is go down to the blueprint technology. We're going to get a whole bunch of good things along the way, but I want to make use of blueprints in this playthrough because it was such a highly requested feature coming out of our last playthrough. So I have a few things prepared. We'll get there in relatively short order. All right, so we have already checked off a few of these boxes here. We still need to produce our coal, which means we don't quite yet have any trees, but he's working on it. Very good. So that will take care of that. The next goal is to build a farm. So we'll need to feed our people. Right now, the only thing we can make is potatoes. I think we're going to, as I mentioned, make this area up here be our farming zone in the longer run. I would like to use this reservoir. We can't actually yet provide water via this reservoir, but we will eventually. So I think we'll place this, I don't know, here to start. Ideally, we'd place it a little bit closer, but I just don't want to waste these trees. Maybe I'll get over that feeling in the future, but for now, I would prefer if we're able to not waste them, I guess. So we'll let our trucks work on that as well. All of these constructions require construction parts, and as you'll see, we have a starting bit here, but we are going to have to be able to make our own. That's what this technology is for. So we are going to have the ability to make these assemblies. Assemblies are your core manufacturers, I guess. They take in all of these basic materials and they spit out all of our more advanced ones, including construction parts. So the good news, we just set up production for iron. We are already collecting wood. Concrete slabs are the last ingredient that we don't yet have. Good news. This starter deposit that has all of our iron scrap also has a whole bunch of concrete slabs. So we haven't gotten the tutorial goal yet. There we go. Now that this is done, we can collect our reward for iron production. Let's gather it. And we'll see here that the next one, which we are already working our way through here, is to build the assembly I was just talking about. So let's do that as well. We'll place it here because the input materials that it requires are, well, they're very nearby. And as I said, we'd like to minimize transportation cost. So we'll get that going, and that will hopefully allow us to even out on the construction parts. As I said, we have this starter deposit or set of supplies. We also will get a pretty good chunk of them for completing these goals. It's one of the best ways to speed everything up here. Our development is a function of how much we can make in the way of construction parts. So the food goal is going to take care of itself. Our farm is now built. It will make potatoes. It takes water and fertility, which will degrade over time. But the water, well, you can see it's raining. We're going to be okay for now. We'll have to expand that in the future. The other thing we can do is handle waste collection. So our settlement here is going to produce waste. In fact, it already is. We can store up to 100, but eventually we got to get rid of it. In the future, there are lots of ways to handle this that are better than what we can do right now. But right now, all we can do is throw it in the ocean, which is what this goal is telling us to do, designate a dumping zone. So what that means, our trucks are going to come, collect all this trash, and they're going to throw it somewhere. So I'm pressing Z to toggle the dumping designation. We have to tell our trucks where to do this, and I'm going to tell them to do this to extend this coastline. I'm going to say dump up to a level that is just below the current surface because it's trash and it looks terrible. And we would like, if possible, to cover it up afterwards with something else prettier, probably dirt, if nothing else. But we'll deal with that in the future. So right now, we can throw trash in all of those green areas. In fact, not just trash. This is the global dumping designation. It can be trash, slag, rock, and dirt. We'll talk about that more when we start to mine. We've made some construction parts, very good. And as you can see, we are getting rewards for that as well. The waste dumping set of goals will complete in a moment. I guess once we have the 20 to go dump, it'll take care of itself. So now I suppose, what did we just unlock? Vehicles? Yeah, great. Let's get our vehicles up and running. So in order to make vehicles, we'll have to make a vehicle depot. I'm thinking about this in the longer run. This is a slightly more expensive building, So I would like this to be a little bit more future-proof than everything we've placed so far. And as I think about it, vehicles are going to need to be more centrally produced, located, reset. This is sort of a base for our vehicles. This area, roughly, probably makes sense. We don't have to treat this as a forever build or anything quite close to it yet, but moving things around is somewhat inefficient. So I'm starting to move that lens a little bit further into the future. So let's set this up here. Let's also collect our reward, which includes some potatoes itself. Lovely. We're good on farming. So you can see that we're producing, assuming that the water and fertility are all set, 9.2 potatoes per minute. What are we consuming? 3.8, it seems. We're going to be okay for a little while, but that will sneak up on us pretty quickly. What else should we do? We are researching maintenance. Very good. And we have dumped some waste. Wonderful. We'll take that as well. The other thing we could do, I suppose, is expand our assemblies to produce other materials. So let's do that. We could have this particular assembly do multiple items. I think because construction parts are so important, we're going to let it stay focused right now on the sole production of construction parts. We'll have this one instead do the mechanical parts over here. That is going to be, we're working ahead a little bit, a goal for us to supply maintenance. We'll come back to that in a moment. The other thing that's great, new as of update 4, you can now see on a building by building basis or vehicle by vehicle basis, the productivity, the recent productivity stats of each of these items. This is so helpful for troubleshooting. So for example, we can see here, we are working at 100% in the last few months. At the beginning, we weren't because we didn't have all of the input ingredients yet. That's because our trucks were still working to supply it. And because we have to bring everything over manually, this is probably going to be what causes inactivity in our machinery in the short term, at least. But this is all very good to see. Lots of green. So we have researched maintenance. Very good. So how do you produce maintenance? Well, you do it in a maintenance depot. So a maintenance depot over, let's say here, nearby our initial manufacturing, takes those mechanical parts we just set up, as well as electronics, which we'll need to set up at some point here soon, and it produces maintenance. What is maintenance? Maintenance is something that everything requires. Trucks, eventually trains, and all of our buildings, everything requires some level of maintenance. Without it, things break. So we need to make sure that our maintenance production is at least as high as our maintenance consumption over the course of our entire base, over the course of the entire playthrough. Good news, this starter building, the basic one, which is not very good in the big picture, can make 220, and we consume a tenth of that. So this should be fine for now. It also means that we're actually only consuming about 1.2 mechanical parts per minute and 0.6 electronics. As I said, that'll scale up, but we don't need to stress about supplying it so much right now. In fact, we just got 40 electronics from this particular reward, which is going to be super helpful for supplying the 0.6 that we need. Very good. All right, so other things that we can do here. Processing iron ore. This is helping us to transition away from scavenging scrap and towards mining the ore itself. So the first thing we need to do, enable the iron recipe here. In the longer run, we do want to prioritize iron scrap if we have it available to us, because it doesn't cost us, we don't have to go extract it. It takes less coal to produce the same output, and it doesn't produce this slag byproduct, which we will have to dump. Of course, we've already designated a dumping zone. It's where we're throwing our trash, so our trucks will be able to handle that as it is already. But we aren't always going to have iron scrap, so we are going to have to be able to do this in the longer run. So we have done the enable the recipe goal, but we actually have to process it. In order to process it, we have to have it. So let's set up a mine. The first thing we'll need is a small excavator, and we'll need to give him a pair of trucks as well in order to supply, or to transport rather, the various materials that he pulls out of the ground. How do we tell him how to do that? Well, we're going to need a mine control tower. So we'll place that out here near where we're going to set up this mine. This at an area will tell him what he controls. And this is fine to start. What that means is when we assign our excavator, once it's built, it will tell that excavator to, if we set a mining designation, I'm toggling that with M, and it comes up this yellow color instead of the green from previously, it will tell him to go flatten, essentially, the terrain in this area. And because that will involve him digging out some of this red ore, we'll be able to use that ore somewhere else. Of course, he's not going to pull out ore purely. There's a lot of dirt and rock in there, and so we're going to need an ore sorting plant. This will allow us to take mixed loads and filter them out into individual products. Iron is, of course, our most important one here, but we're going to have to pull all the dirt and rock and dirt out of that as well. And so we'll have to dispose of these materials as they build up. This is a pretty expensive thing, by the way, 80 construction parts, and it takes a decent number of people and some power. Something to keep in mind, these are hard to throw down willy-nilly in the early game, although they are also important. They are an infrastructure investment. We brought over these vehicle parts that we have a small stockpile at the beginning of the game of, and it also costs a little bit of iron and some diesel. You'll see that the pickup truck takes fewer parts, but it takes rubber instead of iron and a little bit less diesel as well. So each of these have their own costs. We'll have to make our own vehicle parts eventually, but we do have a decent number to start with, and we get more via rewards. So, as you can see, once we build our excavator and 2 new pickups, we'll check off these 2, the mine control tower, and so on and so forth. These are all the next steps popping up here as well. I think we're going to use Unity to speed up the delivery of these products. This doesn't magically pay the construction cost, but it does skip the transport need. Unity, which we haven't yet talked about, is something that you generate from your populace, so to speak. And so we get some at base for having good health of our people. That will deteriorate over time as we pollute the crap out of this environment, but it will also improve as we provide different health-inducing effects, like vitamins or medical goods, etc. So we'll have to keep this balanced. We definitely don't want it to go below 0, but the higher we have it above there, the more we get from a Unity perspective. Right now we get 0.38 from that. We also provide different things to our citizens, food being the first of those goods, and that will give us some amount of Unity as well. Unity is spent on a continuous basis for things like the research lab, and it accumulates in excess, and we can spend that, as I just showed, building things instantly or sort of getting you out of a few different jams here and there. The other thing you can do, if you spend some, 0.25 on a continuous basis, you can essentially double the throughput of many, but not all buildings. And so if we wish we had a second coal maker, but we can't afford to make one, for one reason or another, we could simply double its throughput with Unity. All right, so we have our mine control tower. We just need to assign our small excavator and his supporting pickups. Very good. Now, one thing we'll want to do, right now his instructions are to simply flatten all of this area. We are most interested not in his production of dirt or anything else, but actually in his production of iron ore. So we can tell him, unfortunately at the individual excavator level only, to focus on iron ore. Eventually, we'll have like 5 of these guys working in this space, and we'll have to tell them all one by one to focus on the iron ore. I would love, and I hope, have my fingers crossed in the future that we can set that focus at the mine control tower level as well, but for now it's a one-by-one thing, and we'll have to try to remember to send them over, or rather to tell them each individually to focus as we produce them. As you can see, he pulls up a mixed load, dirt, and iron ore, and this mixed load will have to be delivered over here to the ore sorting plant in order to isolate that iron. Right, the other thing we should probably do here is we unlocked the captain's office. So let's do that. What is the captain's office? Other than being kind of a neat little building, it also, once built, will allow us to spend Unity in some other ways, using edicts. So there are population edicts, there are industrial edicts. Not that many to start the game, but there are quite a few in the longer run. Hey, let's use some Unity to quick build this. Population edicts, we can either spend a Unity to increase our population's natural growth. Based on health, they will slowly improve or increase over time to fill our available housing. The other thing we can do is say, well, you can eat more, and this will actually generate net Unity. I like using this if farming is something that you're not struggling with, to generate a Unity. I think it's one of the more efficient ways to quickly backfill a little bit when you need it. On the industrial edict side, you can reduce fuel consumption, that diesel that we have glanced at once or twice, or the amount of maintenance required. We're not going to do any of these yet. In fact, the only reason I've really built this so early is there's a tutorial goal around it, and more importantly, you need it in order to use blueprints, which we are very nearly done researching. So I think the other thing we'll do after this, we have a couple other goals here. The trade dock and the beacon would be decent things for us to grab. So let's queue up the trading dock, the beacon, and then right after that, actually, the ship dock repair. So once we repair the ship dock, this here, we will be able to send our ship out onto the world map, which we will have to explore, but over time is going to have all of these different nodes, other settlements that we can trade with, areas to explore, and we'll get lots of goodies early on for doing so. Let's collect this reward. That's a pretty good one. And let's build a trading dock so that we can get the next reward. This trading dock, let's say, goes over here, maybe. Play a little bit of pixel hunt so that we can find a spot for it. There we go. We'll take a whole bunch of wood, actually. But once we have this built, we'll be able to trade, which will help us bail out in case of emergency, inevitably. Now we need to process iron ore. So what we're going to do is actually prioritize this recipe, even though we want to, in the longer run, prioritize the iron scrap one. We just need to check this box real quick. So let's get that to be the top level there. Of course, we have to actually consume the iron so that there's room to go out, etc. Let's also stop wasting this Unity since that's not working at all. The thing we can do to help clear out the clogging up iron ore, though, is put it into a storage. So this unit storage can fill up with the unit-shaped goods. So goods have different shapes. Loose storages, by comparison, have things like coal, dirt, iron ore, etc., potatoes. This is more like manufactured goods. And so what we need is iron and construction parts. So let's do that, call it here and here. We don't need this yet, so I won't build it quite yet. We'll let those build, and then let's tell our trucks, using these logistics, to keep it full if you can. This green slider will instruct your truck network to keep it full and prioritize it by default at level 9, but you can say, oh, this is more or less important than anything else. You can also, instead, tell them to keep something empty. We're going to say keep full here. You can also say, once you have belts, to either only accept or send to belts based on the level of fullness, etc. And then finally, up here, these logistics tell the truck network whether they are or are not allowed to either drop stuff off or take things from the storage. We can also set an alert to pop up here in the top left if we're ever, say, out of iron plates. I'd like to know so that I can do something about it. So let's do that. It now wants us to have a second assembly working on construction parts 1. I think that's not a terrible idea. Why not? Let's do it. I'll even quick build it. We have the goods, so why not save our truck network the trouble? And how's this going? Slowly but surely, we're getting the wood delivered there. We have stockpiled the products that we need. Let's take this reward. That'll actually help, I think. Get the wood over there. Let's quick deliver that. We've got a red error. Let's take a look. We don't have enough workers. Oh no. How do we get more workers? Well, in the longer run, we can get the beacon going. So the beacon is this little building here. I usually place it sort of right next to the shipyard, not because it functionally matters at all where you put it, but because it stays in my field of vision. And I am a very visually, if I don't see where it is, it's out of sight, out of mind for me. So we're going to actually quick build this as well. It takes a person to staff and a whole unity to consume. So that's rather expensive, something to keep in mind. But it's a good way to get chunks of workers right away. The natural growth rate is pretty small, not because it's a crazy small percent necessarily, but because we're starting from a pretty small base number, right? So what else can we do if we're hurting on people in the meanwhile? Well, if we go back out to the world map and you look at this other settlement, as long as you have sufficient reputation, and we start with this settlement always with 1 reputation, you can adopt their population. Now it also costs you unity, but it's a one-time thing. So let's grab those 7 pops, and there we are, we're back above 0 on the workers. Good thing to keep in mind if you ever end up underwater on staffing. And great, our first set of refugees has arrived. So the beacon brings in about once a year or so a chunk of new pops, along with some goodies that they've scavenged on the way here, I guess. We'll let the beacon keep running for now. Excess workers will consume our potatoes and such, but there's no direct penalty for unemployment, and we're adding workplaces pretty quickly. So let's check off some more tutorial goals. First thing we can do is quick trade. The quick trades available to us are a function of the villages we've discovered in the world map. We have one already, and the one that it wants us to execute is trading some iron for some concrete. Let's do that. And there's a reward for it. Wonderful, we'll take it. And the other thing it wants us to do is build another housing set next to our existing settlement. We still have plenty of housing, but we're going to need this anyway. I'm willing to bring that investment forward in order to, well, just to get this reward, basically. They're subsidizing it, so why not? The other thing we can do now is finally repair the shipyard. Now that we have this in motion, once it's complete, we'll be able to take the ship out onto the world map. It'll take some crew. Fortunately, we do still have some workers, and the beacon will provide more in a few more months. And then we'll be able to explore all of these various locations. Now that's going to ramp up our production, or our consumption rather, of diesel. And again, we have a bit of a stockpile, and our refugees brought even some more, but we aren't actually yet producing any. And diesel is, from some perspectives, the single most important resource that you'll have in the game, because it is the fuel that will keep your truck network going, and eventually your ships and trains and everything, at least, until you have any alternate fuels. Diesel is the single most common, in my experience, of the possible death loops that the game can throw at you. So we don't want to be running out of this before we have any production set up, which is why that's the next thing that we are researching. While that's going though, where are we at on processing iron ore? Looks like we are slowly but surely chipping away at that. I assume we have enough out here, hopefully. We're working on it. Very good. So with this just about done, there it is. We'll say, hey, please keep some diesel in the shipyard for the ship. And then you'll see it just comes out of the storage there. We've put a full amount of it into the ship itself, and then we have some stored for it when it comes back. So let's get out onto the world map and start exploring. We'll see what's out here. So diesel itself is going to require us to turn oil into diesel along the way using this basic distiller recipe. So we'll bring in a bit more coal. Coal powers a lot of our industry early on, and we'll make diesel, and we'll have a couple of byproducts that we need to dispose of. Where are we going to do that? Well, this is our most accessible oil patch out here. So we'll need to make a few oil rigs, pumps, and that will feed into the machines that we are about to unlock. There we go. The other thing that this setup will allow us to do is produce our own rubber. Rubber is made from diesel as well, and at least that's the recipe we have access to right now. We will mix in some more coal as well and produce some more wastewater too. I like to build these two setups essentially at the same time since they feed into each other, so we'll do that in a moment once this is researched. We have some more refugees, brilliant, including some more diesel, so we'll take that. And the first thing we can do, at least out this way, now that we have the diesel technology itself researched, is get some oil pumps into the ground. So, right now, we can place these anywhere on our oil patch. You can place, theoretically, as many of these as you can fit on this space, but right now what we're actually limited by is the fact that we have to pass these through a pipe. We haven't built any pipes yet, if I am recalling correctly. The initial pipe that we have is limited to a throughput of 60. So what we're going to end up having to do here is limit ourselves to 3 for the short term. But we will place them, I don't know, call it here for now, and we'll let our trucks get out here and build this. Once we have this technology set up, we will build the rest of the buildings that these will feed. Let's see, how are we doing? We have everything else in motion. Very good. Let's talk maybe some more technologies. I think the next thing we should probably beeline at this point is construction parts 2. This will allow us to take our existing construction parts, layer in some electronics, and turn them into the more advanced construction parts that will allow us to afford a lot of the next level upgrades. A lot of good stuff in here, and I think maybe headlined by the fact that we'll have access to belts. So we'll actually be able to connect buildings directly to each other along with storages, saving our trucks the trouble of going from here to here. We can simply let that roll rather than requiring and summoning a truck. That should help our truck network out a pretty good amount. Hey, look at that. We have explored our first location. We get some loot, some goodies from that, and I think, yep, we have the fuel tank already to explore another location. So let's have our ship do that. We have also just researched rubber, and I think we're ready to build our basic distiller. So let's do a blueprint. We're going to use this basic refinery blueprint. You'll see here that I've built it with larger storages and the belts that we don't yet have unlocked. That's okay. We will place it and it will automatically use the smaller storages we already have access to, and we can connect the belts in ourselves later, but it'll get everything in place. So let's place it and talk about it. This is a very early temporary setup for a basic refinery. So this building, the basic distiller, is the core of it. This is where we're going to turn the crude oil. As I mentioned, 60 is our limiter here, and so that's our input. We have 3x20 on the oil pumps that will allow us to supply this distiller. We'll mix in some coal, which we're going to bring in this loose storage here. And once we have belts, we'll connect that up, but in the meanwhile, trucks will deliver it manually. This will produce diesel, and we'll have to dispose of the wastewater and exhaust byproducts. Exhaust, easy. We just put in a smokestack right directly in the building. Wastewater, we're going to send over here. We're going to collect up in this storage for now, but we'll have to connect that to a liquid dump. Now, liquid dumps do exactly what it says on the tin. They take liquids and they dump them. And what we're going to do, just like we did with trash, is toss all of this into the ocean. And it will pollute. And what are you going to do? That's how it is early on, at least. So we will connect these up via a pipe. This isn't super necessary. A truck is more than capable of making that small run relatively efficiently, but we might as well automate it. So let's just do that. And in fact, this storage is not strictly necessary as a result, but you couldn't really put the liquid dump in the blueprint itself because that's going to be a function of wherever you happen to have coastline there, and I can't guarantee that you're going to place exactly the same. So figured we'd put the storage there and it'll take care of itself. The diesel itself will actually be output here, and this storage will be accessible to all of our trucks who want to come take this and send it anywhere else around the base. It's also going to let out a little bit along this pipe of diesel to mix with, again, some of the same coal output and make rubber. Rubber and, again, a little bit of wastewater, which we will send through this setup as well. So the last thing we need to do is connect here the pipes for the oil pumps themselves. And just like that, it should be making diesel and rubber for us in relatively short order. It's going to take a good amount of construction parts. As you can see, if I try to Unity build it, it tells me, oh, you need 268 parts, you only have 11. So we'll let our trucks chip away at that over time. We still have several hundred diesel, so we're not in a rush necessarily. New location explored. Brilliant. We have discovered a damaged cargo ship. We can use this later to ship some goods around for us under certain circumstances, and we'll have to repair it first. We're not going to do it right now, but it's nice to find that early on. More refugees as well. We still have housing space, and we are about to employ a whole bunch of workers over here. Let's keep the beacon running for now. And we have the iron ore reward to collect. Brilliant. We were just waiting on the dumping of some slag. So let's come back here and reprioritize the use of the iron scrap. Recycling is better. As we said, it takes less coal to make the same thing. And, oh, by the way, also less exhaust, and we don't have to worry about dumping the slag. So we're going to prioritize that for as often as we have access to it. And we still have some more, and we're going to keep finding more out on the world map. One last thing to call out in case you aren't new to the game and haven't yet noticed this. They made liquid dumps 200 instead of 60, which is so cool. I love this. It's like a very small but satisfying thing for me. They used to be 60. They used to be essentially a Mark I pipe. Now they're essentially a Mark II pipe. And all of the bases I've ever built have just like 4 of these in a row because you just have to. 60 is not enough in the longer run. So I'm glad that they've decided that's not really adding much. So you just have a bigger, better building right from the start. Very good. The other thing we can look at is concrete production. So in order to do that, we're going to have to build, well, at first at least, this kiln. This kiln will make concrete using limestone, coal, and water. Right now, as a reminder, we're getting our concrete from this deposit, and we are halfway through it. In total, we've used more of the iron scrap that's contributing to this 51% already used. This is a decent amount of concrete slabs, but we'd rather have our own setup going, and we'll get rewarded if we do it. So if we were to do this, well, we're going to need limestone, coal, and water. Where should we build it? Well, bringing up the resource layer again, this is limestone, and this is coal, and this is water. Maybe out this way? Seems reasonable. Most of it by volume is limestone. So I think what we'll probably end up doing is putting it a little bit closer to the limestone side of the water deposit. How about, I don't know, here? This will be a temporary building because right on the horizon, in fact, very close, is a more advanced concrete recipe that's a bit more efficient. I do wonder if this will be one of the things that they end up removing from the game in future updates because it just seems way too close, you know? This used to exist also in order to produce, there were bricks in the game, but now it just feels odd. So I would not be surprised if that ends up being axed from future versions. But in order to make limestone, we will have to set up another mine, right? So that'll be an excavator. And we always want to give it 2 trucks to work with as well. It'll also be a mine control tower and an ore sorter. So let's continue to build that muscle memory and set up another mine. here. And you know what? Actually, now that I think about it, this is temporary. We're going to be making our limestone right away, right here. Let's just do it here. This is probably a pretty reasonable spot for it. So we actually don't want iron ore sorted here. We want limestone. I'm also going to turn off auto assign products because it drives me crazy. What that actually means is trucks can come in and say, oh, I've got XYZ in my truck right now, and I need to get rid of it. I need to sort it. If you don't have a sorter available that is able to accept the entire set of goods in that truck, it won't be able to do anything. It'll freeze up. This is meant to fix that. What it does in practice, though, is it means that a truck will just drive to whichever of these that has auto-assign products and dump random stuff into it. And it makes things messy that I don't want. I want order. But it's a good tool to have access to. I just try to turn it off by default. So let's set up a mine as well. We will say, I don't know, start here. Start chipping away at this limestone. So these gray stripes, each of these is a depth, and the gray recognizes the rock in between, essentially where the limestone deposit actually is and the surface. So that amount of limestone is way down. So what we really want is limestone that has no rock cap right now, because that means it's most easily accessible, and we don't have to sort through a bunch of stuff to get to it. So I'm going to suggest that we start in this area here, maybe even flattening all of that. Seems reasonable. The other thing we're going to need here, in addition to coal, which we can bring in small volumes by truck, I think just fine, is some water. So right away, we only have access to the rainwater harvester to collect water. Eventually, we have these water deposits, but that requires a groundwater pump, and we don't have that yet. So I think what we're going to do is simply, very much a temporary thing, build this here and connect it via a pipe. We'll also need to go ahead and give this kiln a smokestack. From here, though, we'll just bring in limestone and coal manually. I don't mind that. It's a little inefficient for now. It's also not a problem. As I said, it won't be around for all that long. More refugees? We still have space. We're still adding jobs. I think we'll let it keep going. And pickup has no compatible excavator. Now it does. Of course, we'll have to actually build it before anyone can do anything with that. But it should hopefully start heading out there now. It does. Let's remember to set our mining priority to limestone so it focuses on that. So our ship is back. He has a full load of cargo, but the shipyard itself is actually too full to transfer anything from the ship into the shipyard. And this keep empty toggle, which I have turned on here as well as in the trading dock, by the way, means that trucks will attempt to push things out of the shipyard itself into other available storages if possible. We don't have other available storages right now. So we kind of are a little bit stuck here, and I don't want to get rid of these things, and I don't want to build storages just for the sake of moving more things into storage. This will sort itself out, but it can be a fun little Tetris problem early on if you have something that you want from the ship, but can't get into the shipyard itself. We'll be all right, though. I think what we might do is I do like having more diesel storage around the island, and in particular, it's nice to have some right here for both keeping the ship itself fueled, and I tend to build our early generators right nearby as well. So I think what we'll do is say, diesel, keep this full, and it should take diesel out of the storage here, not the actual fuel tank, but the storage itself, and that should create a little bit more space. I think that at least is worth doing. How is our construction part production? Is actually an issue of wood right now. How is our wood production? So somewhere, there he is, we have one of these guys. Let's check his uptime, downtime stats. He's idle a lot, which I think, yeah, so he spends some time refueling himself. He has to wander over and pick up some diesel every once in a while for his fuel tank. But this idle time, I think, simply means he doesn't have a pickup supporting him. So we gave him 2, maybe we'll give him a 3rd for now. I don't want to over-index on this. I'd rather not have our pickups being idle sitting around there, but if it is slowing down our construction parts production, and it is, again, you can troubleshoot this here, missing input products. I do wish it said which product it was missing, but this is a great start. So hopefully that speeds things up there a little bit because, yeah, that's exactly what we are currently limited by. We are missing a whole bunch of construction parts. The other way we could handle that, though, would be to take a loan. So loans, you start with a certain trade reputation, you have to pay a certain interest rate, there's a fee, and a certain number of loans and a certain size of loan you are allowed to take. If you make payments on time over the course of the game, all of these numbers get better. If you miss them, it gets worse. But you have to take loans in order to improve your reputation, kind of like a credit card in real life. So let's go ahead and take one here. We could use it. I actually suggest making pretty decent use of the loan system in this game. It's actually pretty forgiving. You can miss payments and still trend upwards over time on average. So there we go. That's good to see. We're going to let our trucks chip away at a lot of these builds. That's really what we are currently limited by, is a combination of construction parts and truck time to get everything up and running. We currently have the basic distiller built, but it can't really do much until we have everything else built here too. So we'll check back in shortly. All right, a little while later, our oil pumps are starting to drain out into the storage. Of course, it's immediately getting consumed because we produce and consume at 60. But when this backs up, this will also give us some oil to be sitting on. We are producing our first diesel, starting to come out here. So the way that this is set up, we can't bring any diesel out here. This is merely a container for us to export to the rest of the base. So this is in motion. Very good. We are out of things to research. What should we grab next? Well, we just unlocked construction parts 2. And as I said, they will help us make a whole bunch of things, starting with belts. Let's go there first. We'll let the rest of this build too. We actually really don't need rubber right now, frankly, but we do want to get that tutorial goal once it pops up. So I think for now, we're gonna pause. It's not that we don't use rubber, we use a lot of it. We just have a whole stockpile of it, and I don't want to make our too many resources backing things up problem worse. The other thing we can start to do is spend vehicle parts as well, which will help us, I think, burn through both the vehicle parts and the rubber that we're going to need, and add pickups to our truck network. So that should hopefully fix things from a couple different angles at the same time. Okay, we have finally finished the dumping of the wastewater, which has triggered the completion of the diesel production, and then also immediately the stockpile diesel rewards right away. So let's grab both of those. And the other thing I wanted to say, I also built a second tree harvester for us. We can, of course, keep adding these over here at the Vehicles Depot. No reason not to do that if we are limited by wood. So hopefully that should speed things up over here on the construction parts. I think once our ship gets back, although he's currently exploring, keep going, we will be able to complete this one, the repair shipyard and set sail goal. And the other thing we could do actually immediately is toggle these real quick. So if you ever want to game these, all it really does is check and see, is there an assembly one producing electronics or vehicle parts, not is it a new one? So we can, and probably should anyway, just immediately toggle all of these. We don't need to be consuming 6 mechanical parts a minute. In fact, if we go to the statistics window, I'd be willing to see, yeah, it looks like we don't consume many at all. It's really just however often the maintenance depot actually needs to run. And as we said, this is running at what, like 1/6 capacity here at best. So we're consuming 1 or 2 of these a minute. So he's got plenty of downtime to produce some of these other things. So we'll let him do that. We'll have to produce 8 of each of these to toggle that goal as well. So let's just go ahead actually and spin those up. We've also got more refugees, of course, and we are getting closer to being at the top of our housing capacity there. There's a goal eventually that'll pop up that'll tell us to pause the beacon. when we get close, so we'll let it get there and toggle that ourselves in that moment, although just based on how many extra workers we have right now, otherwise I would probably just pause it myself. Again, it's not just about, having excess workers eating all of our potatoes, it's also about the fact that the beacon itself consumes one whole unity every month, which is, 2/3 of the total unity that we currently produce. So we'll let that work. The other thing I wanted to check, based on how many workers we've added, is how is our potato production going? So 9.2, and we are currently consuming 8.3. So we don't need to add a second farm quite yet, but we should definitely start keeping an eye on it. We are getting closer and closer. So I think we'll actually have our tree harvesters focus in this area so that we can place our next farm right here, just so that it's nice and tidy and in line. We have explored another location. We're almost back. We have wheat seeds. Great. So in the future, beyond just producing potatoes, we can produce better crops. And wheat is one of those. It requires tech still that we don't have, but again, nice to have that early on. And our boat should be coming in here shortly, I believe, from over here. Nice new thing about Update 4, there is actually explicit ship pathfinding now. So we won't just see it sort of come in and materialize from the edge of the map and slide in, parallel park. We should see it, there it is, emerge on the horizon and make its way here. Now that we do have a little bit of excess unity though, I think we're going to at least boost these, if nothing else, to show off the mechanic and how it's helpful. But when you have a crunch, I like to use unity to double the throughput of a building real quick. The other thing we should probably do is set up construction parts to production. So one of the things we can do with construction parts 2 is upgrade to assembly 2s, which have better throughput than assembly 1s. We're not researching anything. What a waste. Let's grab some other tools here. So lifts, balancing, and smart conveyors are all important pieces for builds that I like to make at least, but I think that are just good in general. These will pair nicely with belts. Belts go up through lifts. This allows you to, in a more compact way, go up. Balancers are super helpful, not just for balancing, but for setting sort of conditional logic and priorities, and the same is true for the smart conveyors. They are essentially just sorters. They'll pull something off the line for you. Vehicle parts produced. Let's get this back up to here as our priority. We have plenty of vehicle parts and electronics, right? We just need to produce those for the reward. Our ship is refilled and it has now triggered this one as well. Very good. So again, we're still full, but good news, this ship itself never gets full as far as I can tell. So we can still go back out onto the world map and collect those things. It's not like we're going to hit cap there, so we might as well keep exploring. All this copper is definitely taking up some space though. We'll set up our own copper production in relatively short order. And in fact, the way that you'll see that these unlock on the tech tree, right? You remember that electronics is the thing that you add to construction parts 1 to make construction parts 2. You make electronics from copper and rubber, and that's why it's here. But we just have plenty. We don't really need to be making our own. This is another recipe actually that I think they changed. I think it used to be 1:4 instead of 1:6 on the rubber to copper ratio. So it's more copper intensive, or maybe said a different way, less rubber intensive. So all the more reason for us to not stress so much about rubber out here. More refugees, and there it is. We have triggered the tutorial goal that I mentioned earlier. It's the easiest one in the world. You simply pause the beacon. Done. Oh, did they take away the reward for that? Oh, that is a bummer. You used to get something for that if I remember correctly. Maybe I'm just hallucinating. But it is paused because 80 workers in excess is plenty. Oh yeah, so by the way, this is exactly what I was talking about with the auto assigning of products. Right now, this truck cannot find anywhere on the map an ore sorter that allows it to bring both limestone and dirt, because we're still building exactly that sorter. With auto assign products on, this guy would say, oh, well, I can't find anyone with that combination, but I found one over here that would allow me to auto assign it. And so it would drive all the way over here and dump in. We would suddenly start to be sorting limestone out here as well. And that is the last thing that I want. I would rather it wait here so that we actually have, and let's Unity finish it, we actually have it on the site that we care to use it. So it's, again, a tool that's great to have, but one that I typically turn off by default. Here we are, though. This should be a fully functional limestone mine, which is great. So as soon as this kiln receives, well, certainly some water, this is its own internal storage of 30 is probably enough. We could arguably have put a water storage in here as a buffer, but again, this is all temporary. As soon as this gets going, I think we will trigger the, yep, there we go. We just need to produce 8 concrete. We will trigger that one as well. And then we're like largely through the tutorial stage of things, which is great. We can start moving into, I have blueprints for a whole bunch of starter factories that I am excited to start placing. Oh, cool. So we have discovered our first oil rig. So in addition to some loot in this area, we actually have discovered our first world mine. So in these locations, there are alternate sources of a lot of the recipes that we otherwise have to pull from our island. And in addition to being, you know, more easily accessible in some cases, when we run out of this oil, the next one's over here, which is fine ultimately, but we will have to dig through this or build a path through this little ridge. And eventually, you know, our next one's maybe on the next island, etc. This provides you an opportunity to bring it in from elsewhere, in case that's easier, using a cargo ship, right? So that's what this is for ultimately. These offshore rigs need repaired first, and they also take a ton of workers and Unity compared to, you know, extracting directly from your own island's deposits. So they have a trade-off, which is good, but they certainly have a place, and it's wonderful that we have one right away accessible already. So glad to see that. We also have our first construction parts 2 rolling off the line, and I've started to boost this one as well because we've paused the beacon, we've freed up some Unity. So I think what we're going to do is build our first belts. So again, we mentioned that there are different shapes for different goods. We need the flat conveyor for basically anything that comes out of an assembly. So what we're going to do is say, hey, instead of having to make a truck make that run, please just connect it up yourself. Roll on over. And we'll do the same thing here. Now, another neat way you can use logistics here, construction parts 1, of course, feed into construction parts 2, and we want to make both, but we do want to make sure that we still have some stockpile of construction parts 1. We don't want to just reflexively burn all of our construction parts 1, turning them into construction parts 2. So what we can say is that this storage should only output onto the belt if it's above a certain set buffer. So we're going to say, hey, you can only spit out excess to be turned into construction parts 2 if we have more than 40. That should make things a little bit more smooth. The other things we can do with these construction parts 2 are upgrade these, as we mentioned, to assembly 2s, and we'll be able to build a whole bunch of new buildings as well. Oh, first combat. That's right, there's combat in the game. Of course, we can't at all take part because our boat does not yet have guns. So we're actually hard stopped over here until we get to the series of technologies that will allow us to upgrade our ship, which is all the way out here. So eventually we'll be able to win that battle. In fact, we'll be able to win it easily, eventually. But until then, that's as far as we go in this direction. So we still have other spots that we can go, and fortunately our ship does escape. So it'll come back here, refuel, and we'll send it somewhere else instead. You know, the other thing we should probably consider doing now that we have a few extra parts lying around is set up yet another mine, this time for coal. Right now, this is the only coal that we make on the entire island. It inefficiently consumes a ton of wood, and also we could just be pulling it out of the ground. So I think we're going to do that, and I think you know the muscle memory at this point. We're going to take a mine control tower and an ore sorter. We're going to change this to be coal because that's what we're going to pull over here, and this will need its own small excavator, although it's already grabbed 2 trucks. So let's grab that, and then, you know, it's already got 2 trucks, but we need to backfill our truck network, the 2 trucks it just stole. So let's do that as well. And naturally, we will also need to set up a mining area with a proper designation. So looking again here, the nice thing is this is all fully exposed deposit. So I think we'll do is say, probably not right at the ground level, but maybe starting here, just dive on in. See how it goes. New map, so I can't speak to this, but this looks like a pretty sweet deposit, I gotta say. A lot of it very close to the surface, not a lot we're gonna have to dig out. I think later on, all of this rock is gonna like fall down in and make things messy, but early on, that's gonna be a very cozy mine for us, I think. Looking forward to that. Where else should we be building belts? Well, as I mentioned, out here in this area, that blueprint, when we placed it, we didn't have the belts that were required. So again, we still don't have the upgraded storages, but I believe if we place it down directly on top, we should be able to essentially just update it and fill it in, which is great. Of course, we could have, manually just connected there anyway, but that was one click easier. In fact, I don't want to have a truck have to come all the way out here for that. Very small stuff like that, let's just instantly build it. Great, we have run through a whole bunch of trees. Let's keep going. Go in this area next. And we said we were clearing that so that we would have room for potatoes. I don't think we need to do it yet. I know our demand is quite close now, but we have like a bunch of potatoes stuck inside the farm still, and almost 4 years worth of potatoes in the market itself. So we're not in a rush, but we now can place that whenever we realize we need to, which is good. Here, it's iron, and I'm willing to bet, yep, it's because we don't have enough coal. Yet another reason that we should probably get on that mine. However, in the meanwhile, I think a big problem here is simply that we have to be waiting for a truck to make that drop off every time. So let's connect it quickly, and hopefully that's helpful, at least in the short term. All right, so our ship came home, tail between its legs after the battle, but in fine shape. So let's get back out there. We are missing a compatible excavator, but I believe, yep, it has just come out. So let's get our coal mine up and running. And of course, as always, let's tell him to focus on the thing that he exists to focus on. Over here, we are still missing a few more construction parts. I think we'll probably end up having them by the time we actually need to sort stuff. The other thing we could do here is add a few more belts. All of this I'd like to move on from in relatively short order, but I think it's worth investing in a couple of belts just to speed this along in the meanwhile. So I think what we'll do, we're going to move this. I actually don't like where it's currently placed. But we can do that. If we have overlap, we can simply move it instead of having to delete it and rebuild it. Now it still costs you the same net resources as it would to delete and rebuild it, but you don't have to like unload the storage and then reload it, so that's helpful. So we're gonna do is place it right here, holding shift to acknowledge that I do intend in fact to move it. Let's set it to high priority so we do it real quick, but we have it set up. I'd like it to receive from these outputs directly and then send to all three of these machines actually directly, because these two consume it in high volume. This one also on occasion does too. So I think that will be worth doing. Let's skip ahead here until this is completed. All right, perfect. And this poor truck just did exactly what we like to save them all from having to do, which is run something from here to here. So let's get all of these placed, as well as, importantly, both of these segments. So hopefully, and in fact, let's Unity build all of that. Small segments of belt, I think, are a great efficient way to spend Unity auto building. That should, as you can see, automate the flow of basically everything from here on out all the way into these machines. That should speed things up from an efficiency perspective, but also take the edge off of our truck network and therefore reduce our diesel consumption. As you can see from these stats, we only very rarely have an idle vehicle or three. Now, you don't want a ton of idle vehicles, that's a sign of overcapacity, But you do need to see some, otherwise it means there's a huge backlog of projects that your trucks are trying to get through. All right, we finally finished this concrete production goal. We have produced some concrete. Let's collect a reward for that. Lovely. And that automatically triggered and then completed the rubber production goal as well, which we, I guess, just had done along the way out here. And let's go back and pause that. I guess we must have turned it back on somehow when building the second pass of the blueprint. Unclear. So the next goal that we have here is setting up copper. And copper is out this way. There's a reason to do this too. It's a part of electronics, which is a part of construction parts too, as we said. The reason though that I always structurally end up putting it off and then coming really close to regretting it is we have so much copper sitting around here. It's one of the things that you pick up in a ton of excess out on the world map as you go out and explore things. So we're going to delay a little bit, but I'm going to try not to do it irresponsibly. Let's see how I do on that front. All right, I've also put a storage out here for construction parts too, since we have plenty, honestly, which is great. I've attached it directly to the machine, which is aesthetically horrible, but functionally quite helpful. And all of this is, as I've mentioned several times, temporary. We're going to set up a proper construction parts factory not that far from now, which is kind of cool. But if we have excess of this, and we are bottlenecked by the production of these other things, one of the things we can do is to start upgrading our assemblies to assembly 2s. Even if they aren't permanent, I think they do enough work in the meanwhile for that to be worthwhile. If you are trying to find a way to do that math in your head, it's actually straightforward. It costs you 20% of what it costs to build the thing in the first place to relocate it. When you delete something, you get 80% back. Time to designate more trees. I actually think we're going to come out this way now because I want to start building proper factories for the production of iron that has a little bit more throughput. And we're going to set up more official looking manufacturing setups out this way as well. So this area is going to become, I think, prime real estate. And so these trees are not long for the world. We might as well get something for them on the way out. All right, I'm also going to add a little bit of diesel storage out here. Why am I going to do that? Well, every time one of our excavators or tree harvesters, these big, important, but slow vehicles, needs to refuel, it has to come all the way to the nearest storage to do so. Now, there's a tech we can get in pretty short order called the fuel station. It'll allow us to build this little building, which will allow us to assign trucks to specifically go proactively refuel all of those excavators. We don't have it yet. We would want to build a storage adjacent to it anyway. So I think we're just going to go ahead and get this built out this way. Cut the length of those trips in the meanwhile and sort of be thinking ahead about that station placement anyway. Hey, okay, so we have the advanced concrete technology now, which means that we can finally upgrade and move past our tiny, terrible, manually operated basic kiln setup for creating concrete slabs, which is hugely important because it is a key input into our various construction parts assemblies, and we're officially out of that starter deposit. So it's time, good timing, that we are ready to do this. So I have a blueprint, and it's right here. As before, we haven't gotten the larger storages yet, but it's built so that you can use them if you have them, and it's pretty straightforward. I have actually a tendency, let's pause and take a tour through it here, to use the more complicated setups for concrete slabs because I enjoy it, but I actually don't think it needs to be anywhere near as complicated as I prefer to make it sometimes. Let's take a quick peek here at the concrete slab recipes that are eventually available. There are 4 different ways to make concrete slabs, and it's actually really just a couple different tweaks on one way. In each of these cases, you make the same number of concrete slabs, you use the same amount of water, you use the same amount of cement. We'll touch on cement in a moment. But really there's just a question of, in this second column, are you using sand or manufactured sand? And in this third column, are you using crushed slag or gravel, which is just crushed rock? Manufactured sand is just crushed rock, gravel, crushed one more time. So it's actually relatively straightforward. You want to be able to use whatever you have around your base, and that'll depend on which base you are building, which island you're on, and how you set everything else up. It's also tempting in a lot of cases, for me at least, to build it so that you can accept everything. And that's helpful. It's certainly very flexible, but it does create a lot of complexity. So I'm going to start simple. In this base, we are going to have easy access to sand. It's right here. So instead of grinding rock down into manufactured sand, which again, we could do if we were so inclined, it's simply rock into gravel and then gravel into manufactured sand in the crusher building, but we don't need to do it, so we're not going to. So what we will do instead is have the variability on whether or not we're crushing slag or rock to make this third column ingredient. Let's walk through the blueprint then. So our inputs are all here. We will need sand, as we just mentioned. We will need rock over here, which will get crushed for the third column ingredient. And we also are going to allow the manual drop-off of slag here as well. Slag is something that we produce in all of our industrial setups for smelting from ore. So we might as well at least have the option here, but we're going to prioritize using rock. The other thing that we're going to need is cement, and cement is built in this rotary kiln building. It takes limestone and coal to make cement, and a little bit of exhaust. Easy enough. But one of these makes 3, which is enough to support 2 of these concrete mixers at 1.5 each. So this is a very basic, simple setup in that sense. And you can trace the various belts to their various inputs, but essentially we bring limestone and coal from here and here via belt into the kiln, which then spits out its flat output of cement itself into the concrete mixers, which catch a little bit of water, which we are going to manually supply for now, along with the sand and then the crushed rock. Straightforward, hopefully. And let's think about, I know I just put it down for discussion, but let's think about where we want to build this. So now that we're familiar with the inputs, what will minimize transportation for us? Well, rock's going to come from a bunch of different places. It's a byproduct from all of our mines. So generally, in this area, it'll be great for rock. Limestone, we know, our mine is here. Coal, our mine is here. It's not super high volumes of coal. Limestone's much more the important one for that. And sand, we said, is over here, although we'll have to set it up. Water is another interesting one. We actually do have some water over here, and I do think we're going to use this reservoir as a sort of an industrial water provider. We'll need it for copper as well, and eventually steel. So we'll plan to allocate that accordingly. But that basically means the bigger components by volume are limestone, and everything else sort of falls off. So I would say we should build it roughly in this region, maybe near enough our copper mine as well, because we're going to probably end up building our copper factory in this area. So this isn't a terrible location, but I would say maybe something, maybe more, I don't want to build it directly off of this limestone mine necessarily, because we do also have to run the concrete slabs to where we will consume them. That'll be more like here. So I think what we're going to do instead is maybe something like this. And that does also mean that we'll be able to pipe the water directly from this reservoir in a moment as well. But let's get everything built first, and then we'll be able to clear all this out, which will be lovely. So that factory is going to take quite a bit of parts, as we can see. Parts we don't yet have. It'll take a moment to produce them all, but we'll get there. We have the machinery to do it. Out over here, of course. As an update, I've also finally broken down and built some storage just to get all this excess copper out of the shipyard so that we can get access to all of this iron scrap that our boat has gone out and picked up, because I'd rather be running off of that. So I do think, though, that we have enough coal coming out of our coal mine that we can finally clear this out, which will be nice. And that'll free up some parts, which will help with that construction. But it'll also, maybe more importantly, stop inefficiently burning through our trees. So, what else do we want to build factory-wise before we call it an episode? So I do want to get a construction parts factory up over here. We'll talk through that in a moment. I do also want to get, as I mentioned offhand, our copper factory, which I think will be over here. And as well as this has served us here, we are probably going to create our own iron factory, call it out in this direction. So let's maybe place them and talk about them. We won't build them quite yet, but we'll need to do that eventually anyway. So we might as well while we're waiting for all of this to build. Our copper setup, as we said, will probably be right next door here. Same as always, we've unlocked everything but the larger storages, so no need to worry about that. You can upgrade those in place over time, as we are also going to. So let's place it real quick and then talk about it. So let's call it, I don't know, here. We've placed it in planning mode, so we don't have to worry about our trucks trying to deliver to it, but it'll be here for our own reference. So the copper production line is not so different from the iron one. If you remember from the previous smelters or blast furnaces that we built, we are going to prioritize the recycled version when we have access to it, but generally our workhorse will be the ore version, which means we'll also need to bring in coal and be able to dispose of slag, as well as the exhaust that comes out of the furnaces. The second step, after it spits out the molten, is similar as well. You turn it into plates from the molten version, but there's one more step with copper. It comes out impure, and you have to run that impure copper over through an electrolyzer, which means we will have to add some water to it, and it will provide slightly less than 1-to-1 proper final copper. We'll be able to increase the efficiency of this in the longer run, but right now this is what we have. So obviously we'll need copper access for that. Here it is. We'll have to set up a mine in this area as well, maybe even directly connect that. But we'll be bringing in the coal from over here, not so far, and the water will pump, as we mentioned, from here. The other thing, as I said, we'll probably want to do is our own proper higher volume iron starter factory as well. This we have seen before, so it should look quite familiar to you. But this will be, I think, relatively straightforward. Let's call it here. Same as before. Prioritize recycling, but bring in the ore as necessary. We've got coal coming in, and we'll dispose of the same things as before, into plates, out into a storage. This is where we'll dump the slag and bring in the coal and the iron. It's the exact same shape, essentially, over here as the copper setup. The other thing I'll mention, these are both, and really all of the things that we are going to use blueprint-wise set up so that if and when we need to expand our capacity, we can simply extend in modules out this way, limited only by, I guess, running into the mine eventually, but I think we'll be okay for now, and the belt throughput. Eventually, we will simply require, for example, more copper ore per minute for everything to be running than we are capable of belting through. And right now, because these are 30 each and our belts do 60 throughput, we won't be able to expand this until we get a higher level belt, which is not that far into the future. And if we really desperately needed to, we could simply use the other output and a second belt. So that's also quite doable. This is coming along. This is also set up to be expandable, so we can continue these concrete mixers out in this direction if we need to, right? And we can continue the rotary kilns out in this direction if we need to, at least to a certain point. And then eventually there's also the large crusher that we will have to replace. It's not a in-place upgrade, but we will be able to replace this out to this side and increase that throughput. And the rotary kiln has an in-place upgrade, as does the concrete mixer. So this has a lot of room to grow, which is great. So we'll let that keep going along. Once it's up and running, we'll be able to clear all of this out. The other thing we are going to have to set up as a function of this, though, is a sand mine, right? That is something we don't yet pull out on the island. So let's do that. I actually think we can at least start by sharing an ore sorter over here. We might want to move this ore sorter to be actually closer to the iron setup itself so that we aren't unnecessarily trucking iron further than we need to. We're also going to need to set up steel relatively soon in this area as well, so I don't think I'm going to move it quite yet, but this is probably not the final location of this. However, I think we should be able to also handle sand. Let's find out. If that's not the case, no problem, we'll adjust. That does mean we're going to need another excavator and a pair of trucks to go along with that. So let's let this get going. And I suppose we'll need to designate a mining zone. So let's say, I don't know, maybe starting here. Seems about right. Let's get into the sand. On the research front, I think we should probably start to get out ahead of the farming crunch that, it's not on the horizon quite yet, but I'm just familiar with it and have certainly experienced it before. Irrigated farms will help us upgrade our farms so that we are able to provide water manually instead of simply waiting for the rain. That'll be helpful. Crop rotation will help us with fertility. So let's queue those both up as well as the tree planting technology, because we are going through our trees here, and I think we're going to start knocking some over as well. So it'd be good to have our own sort of renewable tree set up out this way, I think, probably here. So we'll get that in motion as well. Other than that, though, I think we are back to simply waiting for the various parts here to be produced and delivered. Check back in a moment. Okay, a couple quick updates. The first is we are starting at 9.2 production and 9.2 demand to be a little bit worried about our potato production. So I think we'd rather get out ahead of it. Let's just slap down a second farm real quick. We're definitely going to upgrade these in the very near future with all the technology we just got, but I'd rather make sure it's not an issue rather than be dealing with that while we're also trying to build other things. We've taken a couple loans here. That's fine. I don't mind missing a payment or two. We are continuing to tick up here, so no worries on that front. We have finally actually completed the concrete slabs factory. The other thing I did was set up, and nearly complete but not quite, a groundwater pump. This will keep us from having to run all this out here by truck and take advantage of the groundwater reservoir that we mentioned. As we said, this will probably end up powering a lot of the water needs for this entire industrial sector. So starting to get that infrastructure up and running now is not a bad idea. I think one's going to be enough throughput for now, but eventually we'll turn this into probably a full set of, I don't know, probably 4, I would bet. And we've got ramps going here to sort of cover up the pipes and make sure our trucks can still navigate cleanly in this area. As you can see, I've already drafted the connection further over here to the copper factory. So that is going to be a nice big step for us. It'll save us a lot of truck transit as well. I do think that means we can probably go ahead and delete all of this. We are going to keep the groundwater or the rainwater harvester for now because we are sort of circumventing it, but there is a check for this tutorial goal that we have 2 rainwater harvesters on the island. So we'll wait. We'll actually have to build a second and then delete them both in order to get this goal, but it's worth it. We get more for the goal than we waste by doing that. Okay, so we are getting enough of a power spike every once in a while that I think it's time to add a second generator. So we'll do that over here. Quick build it and make sure that we have a proper connection for the pipe. And then one other thing I thought I'd show you, we have crop rotation in effect now out here. We've started alternating with the green manure recipe, and even though that means 2 full months of downtime, the regeneration of fertility and the avoidance of the fertility penalty for having the same crop on repeat means that our average production is actually gone up. It was 9.2, now it's 9.8. So that's in one farm, great, but we have 2 farms now, and we're gonna start slotting in vegetables as our second thing, and we haven't even gotten to irrigation yet, so our farming eco is headed in the right direction. And by the way, our groundwater pump is finally up and running, and it's not even nearly at full capacity, which is great. It means we have a lot more headroom here, which will hopefully also be enough for our copper factory once that gets built too. And between the consistent water delivery and now that sand is starting to trickle in, we are making ourselves a decent supply of concrete slabs. So good to see that. This factory is officially up, running, and doing what we need it to do. All right, and then I think we are going to place this fuel station now to improve the efficiency of our excavators so that they don't have to be running all over the place to refuel themselves. I'd rather dedicate a truck or two. We're going to start with just one, but let's see, in order to keep them from having to run all the way from their various mines, even out to here. Rather have a truck make that trip. We have also got vegetables, so you know what we're going to do is instead of green manure, we are going to slot those in instead. And that will mean that we need a second market over here for our settlement, because each market can only accept one type of food. This will help though. It'll spread the demand out for total food. It'll give us a health boost for providing vitamins, and we'll get some multiple category bonus as well. Diversity of food is good for our people. Okay, I think we have enough parts built up that it is time to build our proper iron factory over here. Let's let our trucks get after that, and that will hopefully also allow us to clean some stuff up in this area as well. The completion of this factory means that we are ready to do, finally, the copper factory as well. I think we're only going to build half of it because we still have that stockpile, but I'd like to check off that goal. Looks good. Let's just go ahead and we can clear all of this out at this point. We'll have our trucks come over and just fill that as necessary. It won't be for very long. Oh yeah, the other thing that we're going to need in order to set up a copper factory is a copper mine, right? So got that in motion over here as well. We're gonna share this ore sorting plant for now. Again, we'll keep an eye on it. If it doesn't work out, we'll just add another one. But if we don't have to yet, let's not, I suppose. We also have a small excavator queued up here in the vehicle depot and his pair of sporting trucks. Probably going to need a few more trucks, frankly. I keep adding them and we are still quite busy. On the tech front, we are grabbing some random odds and ends here. Custom surfaces, terrain leveling, some random edict stuff. Really just sort of cleaning the deck up here before we hit the Research Lab 1 tech. So we are very nearly done with this whole first epoch, which is pretty cool. Feels about right for the first episode. We are going to have a lot under our feet by the end of this, including pretty solid productions of all of our basic resources. Looking good. So we've made some copper, which has triggered the end of that tutorial goal, which has triggered the start and immediate completion of a few different ones here. So we have improved our slag export, I suppose. Let's collect a reward for that. We have built the fuel station, reward for that. We've set up conveyor belts. We have mined coal. We've got construction 2 set up, as well as, of course, as we mentioned, copper. So, good news. That is, for what it's worth, one of the costs to delaying, as I have with our copper production. But at the same time, we haven't had to make copper this entire time. I think that'll also help us pay off all the debt we've accumulated along the way. And it'll help us to afford this cute little sign, which is now part of the game as of Update 4. I like that they snuck this in. Okay, so now that we have all of our basic materials production scaled up and ready to expand as necessary in the future, I think the last thing I want to do, so that we have our feet fully under us at the end of this episode, is get a construction parts factory up and running. I think what we're going to do, actually, is switch quickly over to a sandbox world so I can show you my thinking for the longer term for this playthrough. Let's go there now. So, I think it's important that you see sort of where we're going, rather than just what we're building today. I think it's helpful context. We're going to build the same factory, but in 3 phases across the game. So, at the very end, we'll have a factory that is capable of producing all 4 construction parts in pretty good quantity. The first module is construction parts 1. It uses the steel recipe. It prioritizes output to our storage, specifically here, of construction parts 1, but as you can see, as it overflows, any excess then gets sent along to be turned into construction parts 2, mixing in with some electronics. The overflow of that, once this storage is full, then gets turned into construction parts 3, mixing with steel, coming from this same steel storage. Once this one is full, you'll see the same pattern holds. The overflow gets mixed with some electronics 2 to make construction parts 4. Now, obviously, we can't build this whole factory right now where we are in episode 1. That's just not going to happen. Not only do we not have the assembly 5s, the endgame stage manufacturers, we actually don't have the steel recipe for construction parts 1. That's an important piece here because, well, it saves us a whole storage. We run everything via steel this way, and that's what we're going to try to do in this playthrough. It makes logistics a little bit simpler, but we're not there yet. So what we're going to do instead is start with phase 1 of this factory. Phase 1 only includes parts 1 and parts 2, the assembly 2 level of production that we are currently able to afford, and it uses the iron recipe. So we'll have to do this for now, but you'll see it's in the same footprint and on the same belts as the steel eventually will be. And so once we have steel and assembly 3s unlocked, the next phase, phase 2, can go directly over top. On the same footprint, it will then automatically upgrade, add the next module, and this is the thing we'll have to do that's a little bit manual, which is let's clear this out, make it steel instead, and we'll have to purge this line, unfortunately, but that's not so difficult to do. Once the iron is all out of the way, we will make sure that we have steel instead in each of these machines, and voila, it's functional up through parts number 3. Then, when we're ready to upgrade to phase 3, when we need construction parts 4, similarly, it's a quite simple, same footprint, click directly over. We are fully upgraded and ready to go. That's it. So that's the plan over the course of the entire playthrough. As I mentioned, we're only going to build phase 1 today, but I think phase 2 will be in pretty short order. Steel is not that far down the tech tree. Alright, so back in our main world, it's time to build phase 1 of the construction parts factory. So I think we're going to place it in this region. This whole area will probably become a manufacturing zone. If nothing else, this is a good spot for construction parts because it's really just sort of the center of our base at this point in time. So it'll mean that it's not so far to take them from here to anywhere else, really. We want to make sure that we have room in the longer run to send it out this way. In theory, also to add more modules in this direction if we wanted to, although I generally find that 4 of each machine is pretty sufficient for an entire playthrough. So I think we're going to place it here. Well, with the Research Lab 1 tech unlocked, we have officially gone as far in this tree as we can without upgrading our research labs any further. So I think we're actually going to go ahead and just delete these 2 for now. We're going to end up building a separate research facility pretty much first thing next episode already. So we'll just save the parts and the employment for now, and the Unity, actually. As a reminder, right? Labs do consume also some Unity. All right, we're gonna have to expand our housing here too. We are just low on workers, and we're actually starting to run through all of the rest of this copper, which means we're gonna have to turn all these on. So we'll get into housing 2 next time. We're not quite ready for it. We don't really need it. We have the space. So we'll go ahead and just stay with 1 extra here for now. But we're gonna need to go ahead and grab that and probably run the beacon so we have some people to fill it up with. So the other thing we did along the way here is set up the water facility. It cost us some construction parts too, but hey, would you look at that? The reward gives us even more back. So it pays for itself, which should actually help us to accelerate this build, which is nice. We're just going to have our trucks service this manually for now. I don't really mind if we don't have water in here perfectly all the time and it's not that much in volume. We have the ability to dump our wastewater over here manually by truck every once in a while. And we have, let's say, some water out this way that we can pull from. Let's allow that for now. Longer run, there's water here, this is coastal. We'll figure something else out, but it'll do for now. And I think that actually means, yep, that is, as far as I can see, the last spot on the map we were able to go without ship weapons. So call that sorted as well. Let's quickly toggle the fuel consumption edict to grab ourselves another reward. I think in about 20 seconds or so, we're going to have a fully functional construction parts factory. I think we're going to go ahead and call that episode 1 then. It's definitely a longer one to get up off the ground here, but we're in a great spot now as a result. Because tech-wise, we've got everything in the first era researched and implemented, basically, and we'll kick off the next episode by building a leveled up research facility, including the research lab ones, so that we're able to research all of these juicy techs that are on the other side of this divide. There's a lot of good stuff in here. There's better power, there's proper maintenance, there's an additional, more efficient refinery, there's all sorts of good things. Steel, lot of good stuff right on the other side. And we'll be able to afford all of that because we invested in getting a solid industrial foundation under us. This construction parts factory, which I've been keeping an eye on and has already filled up all of our buffers, should churn out all of the materials we need to keep investing and growing at top speed, and our basic material production should be able to keep feeding that factory. We've got all of the iron that we need, we've got plenty of coal coming out of the ground, we've got plenty of copper and plenty of concrete coming up. We've got enough diesel certainly being produced, although we'll look to upgrade this next time as well. But we have everything that we need. Everything is functional, in motion. So yeah, once we have those upgraded labs next time, we'll professionalize the maintenance setup and build a proper refinery and start running power turbines, among those many other things. Things are looking up. So as I mentioned, all the blueprints that we use today will be available in our Discord, the link to which can be found below. As always, if you have any trouble accessing or using, shoot me a message or leave me a comment and I'll see if I can help out. And as always, feedback is very welcome on the blueprint sharing process, the pacing of the video, etc. We're always looking to learn and grow, and we need your feedback to do that, so thank you in advance for sharing any thoughts that you have. This is fun. I'm super excited for this playthrough. The Update 4 content itself isn't too far down the road, so stay tuned. More soon. Until then, though, have a great rest of your day, and bye-bye.